This week we ask, why aren't you reading Avengers Standoff, Assault on Pleasant Hill? This book is about a lot of political intrigue, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., director Maria Hill, Captain America, Falcon, Bucky Barnes, and a Edward Snowden type character all kind of coming together in a standoff on a small town of Pleasant Hill, which is in nowhere what it appears to be.
Hello, my name is John.
Chandler.
And we are back after a brief hiatus for Why Aren't You Reading? This time we're going back in time a little bit. I think this came out 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We are reviewing Avengers Standoff, Assault on Pleasant Hill. So we'll start with this. The first thing I said before you even started reading this, I said that I feel like this was a missed opportunity for Marvel. After reading it, do you agree with that sort of assessment?
I think so. I think you more specifically, as you know, I tend to read more DC than Marvel, so I don't know all the direct aftermath of this that led to it, where you have a bit more of knowledge of that. But the one thing that does spin out of this, I think, like you said, they could have taken it a different way, or even just done a better job of it altogether, and it could have been something really, really cool, because the premise of this was really interesting, and how it was handled in here, I think, was done well.
Yes.
But some of the stuff curtailing off of it could have made it an even more important thing, but instead it kind of made it like that happened.
So what I meant by missed opportunity is, a lot of times when you read these big crossovers that both companies are doing right now, you're like, oh my god, can we cut some of this out? Some of this isn't really necessary. It seems like it's just filler. Whereas this one, I actually felt like it should have been more encompassing with the Marvel Universe. This one should have been larger.
I agree, and it definitely had the scope and of what it was about and everything to involve every hero directly and have each one have a personal investment, not necessarily like one of those where there's a big crisis and it's like everyone has to be here because it's our event. It's like this one directly related to everybody, and everybody would have an opinion of it one way or the other, because it's an important thing, it's a big thing, it's in direct relation to S.H.I.E.L.D. and all the other superheroes that stem off of that and everything.
Sort of like the deep state of the Marvel Universe.
Right, and it was a good story, and it very much was at the heart of all of the superheroes, and I think, like you said, it could have been a great way to over-encompass everything and not just be like, why are you taking over this comic too? I wasn't even trying to read that event. I just want, you would have wanted it in everyone, because it had a good way of relating to every single character that probably could have developed into a larger story, and like you said, spun off into making it more important.
And more impactful. So let's talk about the premise. So in this story, the government has found shards of the cosmic cube, and originally they intended to start changing reality for all of the planet, kind of taking care of the tragedies that take place. The Whisperer, yes, who we don't know who that is, reveals what they had planned. And there's a congressional investigation, and Maria Hill is put on, and she's like, no, we don't even know what you're talking about.
Right, we weren't gonna do that. That was an idea. There's a lot of ideas on my desk. It doesn't mean I do all of them, but yeah. And she's the current director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and so she goes, no, we don't do that.
So you find out I don't read too many things with Maria Hill in it, but she's definitely a political animal within this series. Like, she has her own fiefdom that she's trying to protect, and
yes.
So that got shelved, but she still uses that plan, but on a smaller scale. So the idea that she comes up with is they create a open prison, I guess you would call it, in that it's a town. They sort of brainwash the villains into thinking that they're other people, like a baker, ice cream guy, a groundskeeper, which was, I thought, a funny joke that they made in there.
Both mentally and in appearance, yes. Is that they don't appear like themselves to them or to anyone else who sees them. It looks as though they're a completely different person. They don't remember their former life. The whole point of it is that they take all the good things that were in that person that could have potentially made them a good person, and they change it to utilize that, so then they become that good person, and they live their life in the town of Pleasant Hill, which is a prison, but it is in no way of a regular prison. It looks just like it's a small town,
from maybe
like from yesteryear, but like it, on the outside, it looks like nowhere near a prison, and the goal is that it never has that aspect, because the people aren't just being thrown in a cell and locked away. They're being completely changed from the molecule, like from the from the molecular standpoint. They're being changed and mind altered altogether, so that there's no chance of them breaking out and causing a problem because they don't even remember being a villain in the first place.
So the way that they brainwash him is pretty interesting. So the shard of the cosmic cube that they're using for this one has actually become sentient and is named Kobik. She's 11 years old, I would say, if that,
Yeah,
maybe a little bit younger.
Small, yeah, a young girl. The cube takes its the shards merge together. They try to keep them separate because they know that can happen. It merged together, but it said in its confusion, it looked around and took the form that it felt it most identified with, which was a small child. In this case, a young girl. So
a little naive, also.
Yes.
She gets taken advantage of.
And it's a child in many senses of the word. Yes.
I thought the most interesting character. Well, I would say there were two interesting characters that I really liked a lot. I know one you have a note about over there. Maria Hill definitely gets a little bit deeper characterization, I think, in this series.
Yes.
But the one I thought I liked the most was the Whisperer, and it's revealed later on who that is. I won't say in this one, but he is a person who has long time contacts in the Marvel universe.
Yes. Always on the short end of the stick.
And I think I told you before we started the filming, I felt bad for him because I will spoil it a little bit, and that they definitely make it like he's the villain, and I will.
Right. It's a with a lot of secret government, organizations, especially, fictionalized. It's always at the end, well, we can't take responsibility for this, so who's going to be the guy that we blame? And unfortunately, that's the person that they.
But what I mean, though, it wasn't just the government that sort of made him into the villain. Like I said, I feel like the writer was kind of saying he was the bad guy also, and that he kind of unveiled this thing, and how dare you, sort of.
You've ruined a perfect thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would tend to agree to that. I also think that it's definitely at least from the first two issues, they definitely tried to make it a Bucky, Captain America, former Steve Rogers, and Captain America Falcon. And that story where it's centered around kind of those three people, and whether it by introducing what was going on to the other person, or them figuring it out on their own, or through the help of the Whisperer, other characters, all three of them realizing, hey, this is going on. This is not good. Like, this is not what we signed on for. Like, how are we going to stop this?
Yeah.
And then, as you said, with Maria Hill being the opposing of it being her baby, and her, everything, her trying to convince them or to make everyone see this is a good thing, like this is just a small baby step and what could change the future.
She's definitely a zealot in this. Like, she's like, we are doing the right thing.
Yes,
like,
she's definitely,
buy into my vision.
Nick Fury has big shoes to fill, and she definitely takes very big swings to fill them very early on, which you kind of have to give her credit for. You know, she definitely doesn't just want to be, that's the person that replaced Nick Fury. Like, she's definitely, making a case for her own, agenda, her own career, but...
Well, I know you said you loved the speech at the end that she's giving to her higher-ups about what happened. Like...
Yeah, it's very much, she's kind of at the end of it, of that she has been in the game long enough, and I guess because she's been under Nick Fury, that she knows enough about villains and about the world and how the world works and soldiers, that she knows everything and that she's always right. So that even, when things don't work out or fall apart, or she's on the failing end of that, when she's, at a hearing getting, that allegedly to be berated, possibly fired or whatever, she's going, yeah, I know you're probably mad, whatever, but let's look at the positives that it did, and let's just say, this is a little hiccup, and maybe it could still work, and everybody's like looking around in bewilderment, like, what are you talking about? Like, it's a huge failure, and she's like, no.
You definitely get the feeling from it that she doesn't feel like that this is over. Like,
oh no, it seems very much alive and real in her mind. This was just literally, like I said, it was like a hiccup in terms of the
let's
grand
learn
scheme
from
of
it,
the
make it better next time.
Yeah, improve on it so we can do it again. Yes.
So the perfect prison that she comes up with, obviously, as things always do, something goes wrong. One of the characters realizes that what's going on. He keeps trying to escape and keeps failing. They keep bringing him back, trying another way of enticing him into staying. I think that was pretty well. Like I said, I think the pacing on all of this was pretty well done. But
I agree too, and like I said, it's definitely, I think for anybody that is, like I said, I'm not super familiar with the comics Marvel universe, but I think even if you've only watched the movies, this is a good story to read because all of the main characters are people that are pretty prominently featured in the movies. Maria Hill a little bit less so, but she certainly earlier on, she with the first Avengers and everything, she was certainly featured. But with Captain America, Falcon, and Bucky, like they're the three main characters, and it centers a lot around them, and it doesn't do like what a lot of events can. They kind of halfway through shift focus and pick up a lot of like tiny little other characters, which it does bring other characters in, but it still maintains the focus of the core of what we came in on, which I think is another thing that makes it a good event.
Well, you said another thing you liked about it, though, because you're not a big Marvel fan. You liked that they did like these little asides, like, "Hey, this is who this character is."
Yes, they did a good job of explaining the backstory, and even of just even if you know if you had no idea who those three characters that I mentioned were, it tells you. But then it also tells you, okay, and here's how I'm in this exact situation right now. It's just assuming, hey, maybe you haven't been reading this comic all throughout going period. Like, maybe this is your first introduction, which I think is really smart. It does it in a way that's not, like, very childish and pandering, but it does it in a way that's, their narration kind of explaining just, like, man, like this is how I got to this point. Like,
normally it's just a couple sentences.
I don't really know where I'm at. Yeah, and I think it did a good job of to where you feel like you understand the character and you kind of know, okay, well, this is what's been going on with them in recent history.
But that actually brings up a good point, because this is one that when new customers come in and they say that they've seen the movies and stuff and they're interested in getting into the Avengers, this is one of the books that I actually give them, one of the ones that I give them. Obviously Civil War being one of them also, because it's one that connects pretty well with them. So like I said, this is one that I definitely recommend to like the new readers who come in, because I think it is pretty accessible compared to like some of the other books that are.
I would definitely agree. You don't need a whole lot of backstory. It just, especially if you're a fan of the movies and everything, it can draw you right in, and you don't have to, okay, well, what do I need to read before this? You can just jump right in.
Well, it feels like an epic story. It feels like there's a lot going. Like I said, going back to why I consider it a missed opportunity, Civil War II followed this up, which was the kind of like Minority Report sort of story. I feel like this one should have been like I feel like this was more of a spiritual like successor to the Civil War series, because there are so many politics involved in it, which was what the original one was involved with also. It was the Edward Snowden stuff, the secret military.
Right, and I would agree. And from somebody that has read the first Civil War and has not read Civil War II, I think that, I could easily see it going that way, where I would have, just from reading this, I would have assumed that would have been the story they would have wanted to take and not have to, come up with a whole nother new type of concept. Well, how can we go about this and break, cause friction and with political lines and break stuff? Like, this is already really good stuff where by the end of it, people already have, like, certain lines, and you could definitely see, even though that, like, Maria Hill, at the end of it, only comes out smelling like like sunshine and roses in her own eyes, I could easily see other superheroes saying, like, kind of crappy how she did it, but she's definitely got a point there, and I think she's right. So I could definitely see that being a divide in the Avengers and potentially being a Civil War type of arc.
So I'm going to compare it a little bit to it. I know a book that you actually do like, Identity Crisis, in that, again, they're trying not necessarily rehabilitate the villains in Identity Crisis, but they're trying to keep them from being the homicidal, super crazy.
Right. How far is too far? When you're doing things for the like, how far is too far, and is it really whatever it takes for the greater good of everyone else?
Exactly. Are there any thoughts that you wanted to include about this?
I would just say, like you said, for people who are a fan of Marvel, who've got in through the movies, don't have a huge, vast backstory of comics, reading in Marvel, if you want to start somewhere, this is a very good place. It pretty much utilizes only characters that are from the movies with a few thrown into the side, but it's very well explained. The story is very good. I think it's an interesting read.
We did forget to mention one thing. In all fairness, I do have to tell you that this story leads into the Captain America being a Hydra member. So I know that story was definitely alienating to a lot of different fans.
I liked it.
So
you won't see Nazi Cap in this book.
Yeah, this
he just
book
comes later.
But it is influenced. It does come about because of this series. Like I said, I definitely think this is a good read, though. I think that it's. I just wish Marvel had ran with it a little bit further.
Absolutely, I would agree. It doesn't hurt the storytelling in this book. It's very well story on its own, but I agree. They could have added on to it, made an even bigger thing, made it more of a big deal. But it's definitely a great story in and of itself.
All right. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this Why Aren't You Reading that's covered Avengers Standoff, Assault on Pleasant Hill. Thank you for watching.